Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Gang and I'm the owner of Helen, Olivia Flowers, and I'm going to be teaching your Dahlia workshop today. So thank you all for tuning in. This is one of my favorite classes to teach and by far one of the most popular topics that we teach in workshop, second only to our peonies workshop. So today we're going to create a gorgeous garden-style design, and we have lots of beautiful, muted, washed-out fall shades with some pops of richer color. And of course, we're going to have dahlias as the star of the show. So before we get started with design, a few housekeeping notes. Everyone should have received a beautiful weathered stone vase. These are from Accent Decor, one of our favorite vase companies. And so to prepare for class, you'll want to fill up your vase about 1 inch from the top with room temperature water. Temperature is really significant when we design. So we want to make sure that it's not too cold because it'll shock your flowers, and that the water is not too hot because it'll cause them to explode open very quickly and you'll not get to enjoy your flowers quite as long. So good room temperature water. And then you also should have in your bag you should have a piece of chicken wire. Hopefully you can all see that. And then an ingredient list so you can kind of follow along with what the types of flowers are for today's class. You'll also need some type of cutting tool. I'll show you my favorite tools that I design with. And I'm laughing because it's very, very common for me to have like 3 knives and 4 clippers on my design station, which apparently is also true of workshop. My primary tool that I use is a Swiss Army knife, and you'll notice a lot of the pros will just design without ever putting their knife down, so we get very fast and agile. My second favorite tool are my tried and true floral clippers, and if you're someone who is just starting out on their design journey, I highly recommend grabbing a pair of these. They are calibrated to cut your round stems. They don't do any damage to the bottom of the stems where your flowers drink. And our absolute favorite brand of clipper is ARS, which is a Japanese clipper. And we have a little link in the bio of our Instagram if you want to grab these exact tools. Worst case scenario, if you don't have either of those, you can use a floral scissor at home or just regular plain old scissors. That should be a one-time only thing, and then definitely grab proper tools for the next time. So we're going to take our chicken wire and we're going to prep our vase for flowers by just taking our flat sheet of chicken wire. It's about 8.5 by 11, almost the size of a sheet of paper. And we're just going to carefully roll and tuck the ends in, hopefully without impaling ourselves. And we're going to create kind of a sphere out of chicken wire. This will not be seen. It does not have to look pretty. We're just going to drop it right into our vase, just like so. And the reason that we are using chicken wire is no matter what type of floral design you use or you're making, you want to have some type of structure on the inside of your vase. And structure is what holds the flowers in place, gives them shape, allows them to look designed. So if we didn't have chicken wire, we could also use a floral foam, or we could use a greenery grid or a tape grid, which is like a lattice of Scotch tape over the mouth of your vase. But you have to have something. Without structure or an armature, your flowers are going to flop, they're going to fall apart. So this is really like the hidden magic trick that happens on the inside of your vase. And anytime we start thinking about design, there's always a very specific order in which we like to add our flowers. So the first thing that we are going to want to do is just create a quick little base in our design of hydrangea. This is a great little trick if you're arranging at home. Hydrangea is big and fluffy and full, and really it's quite versatile to use. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my first hydrangea stem, and I'm going to cut it at a nice angle. I want to expose a lot of surface area for my flower to drink. So I'll show you. I'm going to come around up close because it's a little hard to see on camera, but I've got a nice deep angled cut. And you can really like open it up quite a bit. So this is the surface area of your stem, and it's what does the drinking for your flower. So think of your flower kind of like a straw. The more surface area you open up, the more liquid it can quickly drink. So we're gonna go ahead and tuck our hydrangea in kind of at an angle, like so. And we're just covering up some of the mouth of the vase. This hydrangea, even though it's really beautiful, is not going to be a feature of our design today. It's just kind of covering up our mechanics. And it's really gorgeous. It's a Dutch variety of hydrangea, which is the good stuff. Anytime you see hydrangea that's white or light blue or green, oftentimes that's coming from South America. It's a lot less expensive and it's a lot more pedestrian, meaning you can grab it at the grocery store. But this time of year, Holland is outputting just unbelievable, beautiful hydrangea. It's bicolor, so it's got green fading to burgundy plum, really pretty. But again, not the star of the show. So this has already covered a ton of the space in our design. It's giving us really good coverage. And now we're gonna come behind and hit it with some greenery. So I'm going to grab my bush ivy. Bush ivy is definitely a staple around our shop. It's a type of greenery that we use in everyday work, we use in weddings and events. It is, interestingly, the greenery, the beautiful greenery that you see creeping over the highway walls, but it's also sold as a cut green for event florists. And we're going to go ahead and separate it into smaller pieces and just use it to kind of rim our arrangements, okay? So we're gonna tuck it in. It has a drapey quality to it, which is really beautiful. And because we are creating more of a garden style of design, we're gonna let this hang out and be a little bit more loosey-goosey than we normally would. So you can see I'm really kind of elongating my design. So just cutting my pieces of greenery into more usable, smaller pieces. Okay. So I've got a few pieces along the baseline, but I also want to make sure that I'm blending my greenery all the way through the top. So I'm going to put 1 or 2 pieces in the center. That's something that I always say is like the mark of a good designer is how well you're blending your ingredients. So you don't want to wind up with just a weird frumpy color of greenery. You want to make sure that it's interspersed throughout the design. So it's fine for us to concentrate it heavily along the rim of the arrangement, but we want to make sure we put some on top. So the next thing that I'm going to grab is going to be even more greenery. So I'm going to reach for my Stewartina eucalyptus. This is fancy eucalyptus. So this is coming in from Holland. Most of the eucalyptus that we use in our shop comes in from West Coast growers in California and Oregon. But this is fancy eucalyptus. So this has a beautiful kind of sagey green color. It looks a little bit like a baby blue eucalyptus or a Ghana eucalyptus, but if you're familiar at all with this type of greenery, you know that it's different than what you normally buy. So I'm going to go ahead and again break this down into smaller pieces, and I'm going to use it just to elongate my design. The design that I'm making, and you're welcome to do something a little bit different if you want, it's going to be kind of oblong, so it's going to be a little bit football shaped. And one thing to consider is even though we're using a round base, we can always define our own shape. So this could be made perfectly appropriate for a rectangular table just by extending out the ends. And as I go, I'm just stripping away the bottoms of all of my stems to make sure that I'm not getting any leaves into my water. That's a really important thing to focus on. If leaves get into the water, they'll eventually start to kind of congeal and slime up, and it'll affect how long your flowers live. So really nice, beautiful, trailing green. All right, so I'm gonna pause on my greenery and now kind of dive into my flowers. So everyone should have in their bucket some beautiful chocolate phlox. This is again coming in from Holland. It's a beautiful brownish burgundy color. And this time of year, we are really all about texture. So, the dahlias are really beautiful, big fluffy flowers. And so we want to kind of counteract that with some textural elements. So I'm just going to peek that guy in to one side, really beautiful. And next I'm going to start working with my roses. So anytime we design at Helen Olivia, and I know every studio or designer has a different rhythm, but our rhythm, actually I just found another chocolate phlox, so I'm going to pop him in as well. Our rhythm at Helen Olivia is generally starting with our hydrangea base first, blowing it out with beautiful greenery, and then once we feel like we've got like a really pretty, beautiful nest for our flowers is when we start going in with our blooms. And so we like to start with roses first and then work our way back to more delicate small flowers. And everyone should have 2 varieties of rose today. We've got Matilda roses. I'm going to come really close to the camera so you can see them. So Matilda are a beautiful, like burnt, washed out red color. I love these. This is a favorite for fall for sure. And then we also have a beautiful mauve color rose. Half of you have purple moons and the other half have cold brew, but they're almost identical and really pretty. So I'm going to start with my cold brew or purple moons first. And again, I'm just cutting at a nice deep angle. And when I cut my stems, I'm being mindful of the stem kind of hitting the bottom of the vase so that it drinks well. So I'm going to tuck my first one in. And one thing that we're going to do with these designs, since we are not doing a signature Helen Olivia pave, is we're going to play around with the length of our rose stems. So we want our roses to be at slightly different lengths, just to give some dimension to our arrangement. And I'm also going to play around as I go with reflexing my roses a little bit because I want bigger bang for my buck. So when I reflex, I'm going to take off a few of the guard petals. Anything that's damaged or blemished on the outside of the rose, I'll just yank off. But everything else I'll leave in place. And then to reflex, I'm just going to turn out the outermost petals. And some roses are more willing than others to be reflexed. We'll see how well this does. Most of the time when I'm trying to pick a rose to reflex, I want something that's feeling like really nice and tight. Those petals tend to cooperate a little bit better. So I'm just going to reflex a few out and look at how pretty that is. It just fans out the rose. It's kind of like, I feel like a peacock like throwing out its feathers. It's a little bit showier. So I'm definitely going to reflex just a handful of my roses, not all of them, so that they make a bigger show. And again, I'm going to play around with my rose stem length just a little bit. So I'm going to recess one back, pull one out farther, and yeah, that looks really pretty. The other trick, because I love little florist tricks, is to blow on the face of your rose to really open them up. So you can do a combination of blowing on your roses, reflexing them out, but really just getting, the biggest show that you can. Okay. Okay, so I've got a nice little grouping right there. And then I'm going to spin my arrangement around and I'm going to create a similar grouping on the back side. And this color is just really gorgeous. The dark and the lights, really pretty. I'm just creating little groupings. The reason we like to group our roses is just bigger impact. We don't want our roses to give like a real polka dotty effect in the design. So grouped roses tend to read a little bit prettier. and more deliberate when you're looking at a design. So I'll just do a little spin move, being really pretty. And as you go, you may find that you want to adjust other things, like I have a eucalyptus piece that's shifted and is now driving me nuts, so I'm going to pull that out and fix it. It's always a work in progress, a WIP, we say, as we design. All right, so now that I've got my first variety of rose placed, I'm going to come behind and pop in these darker ones next to it. So you can just mix these in throughout your arrangement and just make sure that you're still playing with the dimension. It's just as important to let some roses sit farther out as it is to really recess them. So play with all different stem lengths as you design, and also play around with reflexing if you like. Really pretty. I'm also being mindful as I design to leave a couple of nice big open spaces, because I still have these huge dahlias that are going to need a prominent spot in my arrangement. So you always want to think a couple of steps ahead. Okay. All right, so I'm really filling in beautifully. I'm really happy with how this is looking. The next thing I'm gonna add in are my ivory majolica spray roses. These are delicious, really beautiful, and this is for sure a favorite of ours. We use a ton of ivory majolica sprays in our event and wedding work. And this is a spray rose that explodes open. So they come in super tight and tiny, and really within a few hours they'll open. But the nice thing about majolicas is they hold beautifully. So once they open, they will stay healthy and happy in a vase for days and days. So it's one of those flowers, just because it looks delicate, it still has a really nice long life out of it. And I love popping in a tiny bit of this warm ivory white next to these really beautiful berry tones. I think it's a pretty compliment. So I'm going to use these ivory majolicas to actually fill towards the base line, so a little bit lower in the design. They're super fluffy, super beautiful, and just fill the space so nicely. Okay. All right, really pretty. So next up, we're going to pop in some of our dahlias. And we've got a really pretty assortment. I want to also give a shout out to our incredible dahlia farmer, Andrea of Linvale, who set us up with some stunning dahlias. And we've got the good stuff today. So a quick little blurb about dahlias. Dahlias are one of the few true seasonal flowers that are left. So pretty much everything has been mass produced or like dosed up with the GMOs and hydroponic water, and it's grown 12 months out of the year. So peonies, for example, you can source pretty much 12 months out of the year. Ranunculus, sweet pea, hellebore, tulips, you name it. We can get it always. You may pay a little bit of a premium to get your peonies off season, but you can still have them. Dahlias are one of the few flowers that are still grown outdoors in the fields, and when dahlia season is over, when the first frost hits, it's lights out. There are no more dahlias. For that reason, they are about as premium as you can get. Dahlias, from a price standpoint, compete with peonies for sure. I think they're way more expensive than peonies, and they're just really stunning. Another reason for the cost of dahlias, in addition to the fact that they're like really grown outdoors in the elements, is that they do not really travel well. So moving them costs more. I have found after years of doing this that I only have good luck with dahlias when I buy them very local. So we're using only Virginia dahlias. We've tried importing them. We've tried shipping them from the West Coast, and they usually arrive mangled and sad. So Linvale is who we get all of our dahlias from locally. She's fantastic. We love her. And so we've got cafe au laits today. Cafe au lait is probably the most sought after dahlia, really, really prized for wedding work, and they're huge. So it's a dinner plate variety, which means that it's a lot bigger. It's like the size of your hand, and a lot pointier petals. And we're going to start with our cafe au lait just by virtue of these are huge flowers, and we want to make sure that they get a good prominent spot in our arrangement. Because they're very top heavy, you want to be gentle as you cut them. And we're going to tuck our prized cafe au lait baby in towards the top. And one of the things that you have to kind of learn to love about your dahlia is that they really will not sit more flat in your arrangement. You may break the stem if you try to do that. So they're going to kind of stick straight up. And so you have to figure out a place in your arrangement where they will sit straight up and look beautiful. So I sometimes like to cock them kind of off to the side. So I've got my cafe au lait tucked off to the side, and that's where I think he looks most beautiful. Decided it's a he. So play around, but I would not recommend trying to bend the stem back so it sits more flat, because you might wind up lobbing off your cafe au lait dahlia bloom. The next dahlia variety that we're going to play with are peaches and cream. This is my favorite dahlia. So this is a palm dahlia, and you can see it's much more compact, it's much smaller, and it's a bicolor dahlia. So if you look really up close, you've got some variegation that's beautiful. That's the side view. And my cafe au lait has some little buds hanging on. Once the flower is cut, the buds really are not going to do much of anything. I just think they have really cool texture. So I'm still going to keep my bud on. And I'm going to tuck my peaches and cream in. Oops, my chicken wire is giving me grief. I'm going to tuck my peaches and cream in also towards the top. And you can see I'm creating some movement in my design. Not everything is the same height, which feels nice. So just take some time and work in your dahlias. Dahlias are by a mile the most delicate and fragile blooms that we handle this time of year. And they are also not the longest living, which is a little bit sad. So your dahlias will probably be some of the first to perish in your design. And I'm going to talk to you at the end about how to refresh and keep your dahlias happy, but they're definitely temperamental flowers. So it's not you, it's them. Fleeting beauty. We also have some exquisite Burgundy Dahlias. I'm just going to peel back some of the petals off of my Burgundy Dahlia because mine is so big it won't actually fit into my design. And this, again, is more of a dinner plate variety. So with your dahlias, if you ever wanted to remove a few of the petals, you can remove them from the back. I wouldn't recommend going too crazy removing petals because it can hurt your flower, but a few is fine. So I've got a really beautiful Burgundy Dahlia. So I'm just going to put this in, and again, I'm not really going to try to maneuver the line of my flower. There are some flowers that if they're like leaning or facing a direction that you don't love, you can kind of massage them in a different angle. Dahlias are not those flowers. They will do what they want to do, and to hell with your design plan. So you got to just kind of embrace the way they are facing. We're also at the stage of design where the chicken wire is no longer helping us, it's actually hurting us. So I'm having a hard time getting my stems in. Just be patient, breathe through it, say nice things to your flowers, and hopefully they cooperate. Okay. Really pretty. So let's go ahead and get all of our dahlias popped in. Looking good. And the last thing that we're going to add to our design, we've got a few, like I call them floaty flowers. I always like to add floaty flowers at the end because if I ever feel like my design is getting too compact or too dense, adding the floaty flowers will kind of allow some extra movement in your design. All right, so we are going to start with Scabiosa pods. Scabiosa pods are part of the scabiosa flower. And this time of year, they dry out, they get really crunchy. This is what's left after the flower goes. And they're just beautiful fall texture. Brown is all the rage this year. People cannot get enough of brown. And so scabiosa pods are a really hot item. Just cool little bits of texture. So you can allow your scabiosa pods to really kind of float away and dance past your flowers. Okay. And I'm going to just pop one of my scabiosa pods in like a little bit lower down here. I also have in the everyone's bucket beautiful Sangorsia, which is coming in from Holland. So we're going to go ahead and add this. Okay. I'm going to make mine like a little bit asymmetrical, I think. So I'll have it kind of floating away out to one side. And I was able to split my stem. I have a tiny piece of it right here. I'm just going to put it in on this side just to balance it a little bit. Okay, so really pretty. And the last thing I'm going to tuck into my arrangement, we have beautiful Queen Anne's lace. This is one of those flowers that's 100% considered a weed. In some places, like you'll see this on this side of the highway as well, but it's also grown as a cut flower. And it is super, super beautiful. I love Queen Anne's lace. It's one of those flowers that is kind of like an afterthought for me. Like after I've written a formula for a wedding, and I think to myself, gosh, I really want something that feels wispy and brings movement to my design, I'll add Queen Anne's lace to my formulas at the end. It's another one of those flowers that looks super delicate but actually holds and lasts really nicely. And you can see just allows us to kind of spray out and extend past our weight flowers to get that movement that we are all wanting in garden style design. So I'm just gonna poke in some Queen Anne's lace. And you decide how much of a garden child you wanna be. Like if you feel that you are more of a compact and tight person, you can always tuck your Queen Anne's lace in a little bit more. So we defer to you. What feels comfortable to you? I actually have a little bit of chocolate Queen Anne's lace, which is a little bit more of a brown color. Just gonna mix in all over. All right, so at this point, I'm gonna do a little bit of a spin move and kind of assess my design from all sides. And just make any edits that I want to make. I think it's looking really lovely. So towards the end of my design, I always want to kind of look to see if anything has shifted or moved around so it doesn't look so hot anymore. I want to also eye up the baseline of my arrangement. A lot of times when you're putting stems into a vase, you'll accidentally overshoot or miss your water, which is easy to do. So you just want to make sure everything is actually in the vase and not sticking out of the vase. And yeah, that's about it. So once you've made edits to your design and you feel like you like the way everything is looking, we need to talk housekeeping, how to care for your flowers, which is super important. So the first thing, dahlias do not like heat. That's the #1 thing to remember. So you want to keep your dahlias shaded and out of sun. You also want to make sure that they get nice, cool water once a day, so refill your vase. And if your dahlias start to look sad, fill up a tub of water and just let your dahlias sit in the water or submerge in the water, and they'll rehydrate a bit. There is definitely like a shorter life expectancy for dahlias than other flowers, so that's totally normal. But these guys are beautiful and fresh and just came in from the farm, so hopefully you have a good long run with them. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to message us, email, comment, and we will get right back to you. I hope everyone had a really fun time at Dahlia class, and I hope you enjoy your beautiful arrangements. And hopefully we'll see you soon. Thanks.